Online commissioners, please turn on your cameras. We are about to restart our meeting. Our meeting is called back to order at 2:02 p.m. We will now move into agenda item number 6, community engagement to seek strategic plan feedback. Joyce will discuss our continued community engagement and feedback process as we review and finalize the strategic plan draft.
Okay, and we're back. Hello, everyone. So we have a couple of slides, but I don't know why it's showing up like that on the screen. That should be a map of California, not of the world. Um, it's probably a formatting thing when things go and files get transferred, but um, so we will make sure that the version that is posted online after this meeting has the correct version. But yes, I originally had a couple of slides for this. We wanted to talk about what community engagement activities are happening between now and when the plan gets finalized in November. But you all, I think, actually did a really great job of capturing some of the key points that I wanted to talk through. So we're going to move through this pretty quickly, but of course, always open to any other feedback or thoughts as we go through it. So the first thing, what we were supposed to see on this slide was where we've been in California. The orange is places we've already visited in past commission meetings. So I would think of these areas as folks who communities who have been part of the strategic plan building process, right? Like the ideation, the brainstorming, that initial setup that we've been doing. What's happening in green, so that's Klamath and Stockton. That's where we will be going between now and September, which is where we're going to try to vote on a draft of the plan. In the spirit of listening to commissioner feedback around, we want to get into the action. We're going to see if we're ready to take a vote on the next draft at the next meeting, if we can get quorum, and then, we'll move into the finalization and design portion in November. So, so you can see here, even though on the virtual screen, California is a big state. We might not see it on the screen, but California is a really big state, and we're highlighting just like a handful of pockets of folks. And then I see also Los Angeles County and San Bernardino County in black, and so those are the areas that we will go to between September and November. So a couple other communities we'll be visiting. And at that point, the conversation starts to shift a little bit into how do you want us to operationalize this plan, right? Because around that time, we're also starting to move into initiatives in your committees. So we know that this structure is, we're doing the best we can to try and engage community throughout the whole process while still being able to visit different parts of the state, knowing how big California is. So with that, we know there's probably a question here. People will say, well, California is such a big state. What about all the places we are not able to visit or have not visited yet between now and November? And so on the next slide, we're going to talk about other things here, other activities. So we will start with, here we are today, July 26th, feedback on the first draft. And we're going to take that feedback and prepare the revised draft. Then the next couple of activities, again, we'll go to that listening session in Klamath in September. But another part of this, for folks who are not able to join in person, we're going to offer a couple of online feedback opportunities as well. So we are thinking about conducting a feedback survey to be able to expand outside of just who's in the room today, virtually or in person, right? Leaving it on the website for a little bit so there's time for people to respond with their thoughts. And then also a webinar. So we know that not everyone can come to in-person meetings. We know that sometimes folks may not feel safe or comfortable coming to an in-person meeting, right? And so we want to also provide an online way for people to engage with the commission. And at this webinar or survey, we're looking for things like, you know, what is resonating with community members in particular, broadening outside of the perspective of just the commission, right? So what is resonating with community members? What do we need to edit? And then the last piece, how might the commission work with community members and organizations to implement the plan, right? So what is that like? How do you do this together, knowing that it can't just be the commission and knowing that a lot of this work might already be happening? In September, our next commission meeting is September 27th in Stockton. That's where we'll review that final strategic plan draft and see if we are ready to approve that. If that feels too fast at that time, you know, we'll kind of see how that conversation goes, and we can always try to be flexible with that schedule. But again, trying to balance wanting to move into committees and start initiatives. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll look at it, the draft in September, the final draft. We'll go to October, where we have another community listening session in the Inland Empire. So that one will be focused on if we have a draft, a final draft, what does it mean then to put some concrete actions behind this? How do community members see the commission taking action on that plan? And then November 15th would be that next commission meeting in Los Angeles, where we get into committees and start to form those initiatives some more. So I know there were some other things that were said earlier today around dialoguing with community members, and if we still want to, you know, explore that, we can. Ideally in that July through September period, but would love to hear from folks if there's any initial reactions to this or thoughts. We can go ahead and move into the commission discussion. And then for members of the public, again, you know, filling out that public comment card and letting us know what you think too. So any initial thoughts or questions, reactions from the commission?
I have a question for commissioners. With the process that I touched on earlier about having a public comment period with the mission or even some of our goals and objectives, if there's any specific feedback you guys are wanting that we can start to implement in August prior to our next meeting, I would love to hear any thoughts or ideas on specific language, not language, but prompts to get young people thinking about how they can respond in a way that helps you guys feel like we're landing in a sweet spot that really speaks to all youth. So any thoughts on questions or prompts that we can post for that public comment period to make sure that young folks are reviewing the plan or the goals in a way that can inform you and how to move forward?
I kind of just want a very raw reaction without prompts for individuals who are kind of like reviewing our mission statement and our vision. Because that is how most people are going to be receiving it. They may know a little bit about the commission, they may know nothing. They may just be perusing our website for the first time and getting to know us. So I think that it's helpful to get that raw reaction from them. And then maybe after getting that reaction, we can have more prompted questions. I just want to mention that that's an integral part of kind of getting the baseline is like, what is your initial response? So just wanted to mention that.
I think it's also important to consider how we're going to drive. I guess, would this be something that would be on our website, or how are we going to make sure that people are actually coming to our website to respond to this in the first place?
Great question. The hope is to leverage the platform of the Go Serve office. My ask is to you all. I'll have it on my own LinkedIn account, but the folks that we have engaged with along the way from listening sessions, reaching out to those organizations and inviting them and youth who are within their network to visit the webpage. But yes, it would be listed as a separate tab on the website. And Commissioner or Chair Wednesday, I agree. I just want to make sure that we're getting you all the feedback that you all are feeling like you are still needing. But I agree with the raw reaction.
Perhaps some non-intrusive, like, background information on who's responding. So, like, how much have you interacted with Commission thus far? It doesn't have to be like, were you at this meeting or that meeting or this listening session? But like on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with the Youth Empowerment Commission, right? So that way we can kind of get a gauge on interpreting their answers, right? If someone's super familiar with it and answering, it's going to be different than someone who just visited the website for the first time.
Just wanted to throw an idea out there. I don't know if this is feasible, but is there any opportunity to conduct like an in-person interview or feedback session conducted by commissioners? Like if we offer people an opportunity to sign up and tell us their reaction, and we actually get online and offer our certain time slots where we can hear directly in a virtual format.
That is an amazing and innovative idea. I'll check with our legal team to see if Bagley Keene is something to consider with that. My initial thoughts or reaction is a serial meeting or process, but I'll connect with our legal team to see. But if not, I think that would be a great way to have more eyes and direct interaction. Last night we heard that surveys are not the way to engage with young people, so an interview would honestly be the best workaround. So I will let you all know.
With Bagley Keene, would it be possible for us to just have 2 commissioners to conduct that interview, and then perhaps we could take a video of the interview and then just review it very briefly, key points or key figures during our next meeting?
Theoretically, couldn't, as long as you don't share the information that you receive with other commissioners, if you just give the information to staff directly, then theoretically there's no serial meeting, right? Because we're allowed to convey what we hear from youth to staff. As long as I'm not talking to Chair Wednesday, I'm like, oh, this person said this, what do you think, right? Then that might turn into a serial meeting. But if we're just like collecting it on our own and sending information to Joyce and you, maybe we can.
I agree. I think it can work. I just want to confirm that before absolutely saying yes here.
Well, I volunteer to help interview community members and constituents to have that discussion.
Okay, any other thoughts from commissioners? Really appreciate all of the ideas and feedback here.
One last question I had about kind of the locations was, could the team share any more back context on like the criteria used to choose these locations and how in general we think about geography and our approach to that?
Great question. For me, I've done a scan and a research on what are our cities that have youth who are the most underserved and impacted, highest impoverished rates, highest crime rates, youth who are Medi-Cal eligible as well. I think as we talk about underserved youth, opportunity, formerly referred to at-risk youth, where are those young folks and where are their gaps in services and systems? Going to those communities where we can hear directly from young people. With Klamath, that is a sovereign nation that is governed by the Yurok tribe. So there is a connection with the racial equity, I was going to say racial empowerment, Racial Equity Commission. They have a commissioner who belongs to that tribe and has extended that collaborative opportunity for us to engage with youth there, which is why we chose Klamath. And we do not have any Native youth representation. So I think it's very important for us to hear from that community and to hear how can we also make sure we're serving them.
I mean, could I propose maybe Salinas? I just think that specifically coming from that community, there is high crime rates, but there is also very minimal opportunities for youth engagement that exists right now. And I think it would be very, I don't know, like inspiring for a lot of individuals that are living in that area to see what is actually happening in the state of California, especially because, at least from in my town, it's very much like politics is not really spoken of, and mostly it's like not something that people are comfortable with unless you are actively engaged. So I think it'd be very cool if we could do that.
I would like to second that. I have several members of my community that are from Salinas, and in the course of conversation about my work, they have said that they would like the commission to come to Salinas, so I would like to mention that as well.
Speaking of, so the Racial Equity Commission are partners in this work. I think when you're talking about racial equity, you would be remiss to not bring youth into that conversation. The Racial Equity Commission was actually just in Salinas last month, and they had an amazing turnout for their community engagement session. So I agree, the power is there, the voice is there, and I am happy to figure out how can we plan for that in a way that truly serves the Salinas community.
All right, I'll just give it a second, see if any folks have any other thoughts. Commissioner Jocelyn and Commissioner Andrea, I know y'all are following online, so if there's any thoughts there, feel free to let us know.
I actually wanted to go back to the interviews and the community listening sessions, as well as the prompts that Director Wallace brought up. I do think there is value in the youth registering and writing down or documenting their initial raw reaction. But I also think there's value in having, it doesn't have to be too specific or overly broad, but general prompts that gauge, okay, does this come across? Do you think this is necessary? Do you think this fits the mission, our mission statement that we're conveying? This is what we stand for. So I think maybe not too broad, but not too specific, somewhere in the middle, somewhere that's balanced, that accurately captures, is our strategic plan making sense? Is this needed? Does this serve a purpose? And then gather their opinions from those responses. I'm concerned about the interviews. I'm not sure how much time that would add to our timeline. And to me, it also seems like kind of duplicated efforts in terms of like having the interviews on top of the listening session, on top of the meetings. I think the energy that goes into recruiting the youth to attend and sign up for the interviews could also go to recruiting and inviting the youth to come to our general meetings. For example, if we had the interview, right, instead of conducting the interview, doing what we did today during the meeting at the tables, and everyone is talking, everyone is working together, and they're flashing their ideas out, I feel like those collaborative discussions would yield more fruitful and detailed responses than a single interview that then we have to like take back and discuss collaboratively, if that makes sense. I feel like our energy that would be directed towards the interviews and individual kind of figuring all of that out, those efforts could be directed to channeling our youth to the meetings and to the listening sessions to make it as fruitful as it can be.
My thought process was that I could potentially conduct these interviews individually outside of our meetings, to try to, one, save time during our meetings so that we can have more of those fruitful discussions, and have more time to communicate about what the findings are of those interviews. We have a lot of other activities and a lot of other things to get done. And we will, of course, have all of our community listening sessions, and these things can be brought up. And of course, we are going to continue our efforts to try to recruit more youth and more members of the community to come to our listening sessions. I believe that I could likely get this done outside of commission time, however. So I just wanted to offer up my personal time outside of meetings to be able to get that done and bring the data back. But if the commission would rather have that be an activity that we discuss during a meeting, we can absolutely discuss that.
Yeah, I think my intent with throwing out the suggestion was that it would be like additive to all of the efforts and not necessarily take away from any other recruitment efforts for our general meetings. I do think it's fairly challenging for some of us on the commission to make the community listening sessions, as they're often during Fridays during working hours. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to like meet virtually. Like I can more easily offer 30 minutes of my time on a weekday than I can like miss a whole day of work. So I just thought that would be a good avenue to maybe offer another way of engagement for both our commission as well as for youth.
I also think that the interviews would be really helpful if we try to get them in areas that we haven't been in. So obviously we can't be traveling everywhere around California, but we go, hey, if you want to talk about what you're feeling or anything like that, you know, we can meet up virtually. And that's the way of connecting with individuals that we haven't been able to connect with yet, so.
There we go. Just a thought. What if we mix this opportunity to interview youth by reaching out to other youth commissions? I will continue my outreach efforts with them, and if I can schedule some online Zoom meetings with them, perhaps I could work together with Commissioner Jessica, and we could have that conversation. If you didn't volunteer for this, so I'm just throwing it out there. But we could try to schedule a couple of meetings with maybe some other members of other youth commissions and just see, as you know, other youth commissions, what are their perspectives on this specifically. So that will give us a mix of like that youth perspective and simultaneously help us kind of do some more of that networking with other youth commissions.
Joyce, it looks like you're going to say something, but my word right now is just time and feasibility, and I don't want you all to go too far into having to plan something with other folks that might impact your schedule and timeline. I think you all are appointed as commissioners because you are naturally embedded in community and connected to your community. So even if you're communicating with and interacting with youth who are naturally within your network, I think that's, in my opinion, will suffice so that you're not having to spend so much time or your efforts on the outreach to bring young folks to you as opposed to who you naturally have access to. And then I also would love to hear Joyce's recommendation on what is that interview setup? Is that a raw reaction? Are we going to create a few questions here so that it's a standardized interview process, so that the information that we are gathering, there is some cohesion in the results that we have? I would want that to be a bit structured so that everyone is having a similar conversation to get similar results and reactions.
I think you took the words right out of my mouth, Director Wallace, so I don't have too much more to add there. But one thought I do have is, well, maybe two thoughts I have. One is we do have a presentation on the survey right after this, so I know that we are talking about, oh, I see. Okay, we will have a conversation about the survey in a future meeting, it sounds like. So I will say, even though I know we want to gather feedback outside of the survey and input outside of the survey, I think there is a part of a connected conversation we also need to have there in order to answer that question of how do we, are we building something that maybe is different from what we're getting out of the survey, right, if we haven't seen the survey. The second piece is I'm wondering if there is maybe a balance without prescribing a specific recommendation now. I know we need to check with legal too, it sounds like. we have the webinar. There's a virtual platform where we could conduct some of these conversations. If it makes sense to replicate multiple so that commissioners can join 2 at a time, or whatever makes sense under Bagley-Keene, we could explore that. Again, no promises without talking with our legal team. And then I think the last thing is, if we do want it to be in person and maybe a smaller group, I'm wondering if there is something around, to Commissioner Aiden's point earlier, almost small community groups based on how familiar folks are with the Youth Empowerment Commission. So I don't know how this works in a in-person model just yet, but there could be something, at least virtually even, if something around folks who have never engaged with the commission before and they're kind of coming for the first time to this like first meaningful touch point, finding what themes are emerging from those conversations, right? Then there's maybe a group who has engaged with the commission a couple of times but is not heavily involved or following actively. And then maybe there's a third group who is really hungry for the, following the work of the commission, has consistently done that. I'm not sure if we know who that group is right now, but there's a world where we could maybe do some exploration there. So threw a lot of different ideas out. Happy to take any other thoughts or reactions to that.
I like the idea of focus groups. I think that would be very helpful. And if we did choose to do in-person interviews, I am in the Sacramento area. There is a lot of political activism there, and something I've noticed is that primarily most people do not know what the commission is or that it exists. So I think it would be very conducive to our efforts to maybe have like an in-person focus group, if possible, within our community. I believe that you're also located in the Sacramento area, so perhaps we could brainstorm that. Between the two of us, I believe that we have a lot of networks of youth there, so we could have that discussion as well.
I also like the idea of focus groups, and I think for me, especially as someone given the logistical challenges of being on the other coast for most of the time, I think being able to expand that online, especially as Commissioner Jessica was saying, would make me feel like really like I could contribute more to the commission. And I imagine that for some of our other commissioners that are also coming in virtual, that this could be a way to engage them as well if they so choose.
I would like to speak briefly to what Director Wallace had said about us extending ourselves, because yes, we do have other life obligations and other responsibilities, but if anyone does feel interested in expanding their work with the commission, maybe we could have that conversation about volunteering to do so if you have time in your schedule, if it doesn't extend you too far, and if it's something that you feel comfortable doing. Considering that, you don't get the per diem if we're not at meetings, things like that. But we can have that conversation about just being more active in those spaces, whether virtually or in person with communities. I think if that's possible, I know some of us have full-time jobs, some of us are in school full-time, so it might not be feasible, but we could at least, discuss it if anyone's interested.
I think the way I love all of the ideas of interviews, focus groups, and for me, I generally was feeling a desire to engage a bit more as a commissioner and like volunteer my time, and I'm hoping that's like the general sentiment. Of course, like thinking through everyone's time constraints, but I was thinking about creating a more structured format where we could all engage instead of like certain charges being led only by like individuals of the commission, of it being more like not necessarily an expectation for everyone, but just an additional opportunity for engagement. So just wanted to call out that I was hoping it would be more open to the whole commission instead of only being led by certain members, but again, dependent on people's availabilities and willingness to engage.
I definitely agree. I think that also for me, the idea of doing those kinds of focus groups and even youth engagement will maybe come like after this process of like the strategic plan. So like when we had the idea of like advisory committees, we could definitely find ways for like groups of, because we can't have more than like 2 commissioners necessarily on these meetings, right? So like if it's just to do with the strategic plan, maybe we can kind of allot 2 commissioners that are willing to do that for this up till November, but we can start planning ahead, and based off of the like technical adaptations that those commissioners go through for this process, we can kind of learn how, when we do like an education committee and like whatnot, we can go out in our groups of 2 commissioners or 2 to 3, whatever is allowed, and like connect with the community on Zoom and other platforms in that way.
I agree with that as well. I think it would be a good idea to have a pilot of 2 commissioners now that are going out and doing these efforts, and potentially identifying barriers and challenges to these efforts early, so that before we do get into our little like sub ad hoc groups, however we end up doing that, and sending commissioners out that are willing to volunteer their time that way, what challenges we've already identified, and kind of like brainstorm very briefly as a commission, like how to overcome those barriers. And then when we do have our meetings, how we can kind of network and solve problems as they arise.
So just for my understanding, if we have 2 or 3 commissioners today, if it's Commissioner Jessica and Wednesday, what exactly does that interview process look like? I think we should agree on that here, since we wouldn't meet again until September, which is where you all will be, where we will be incorporating the feedback that you all have into the next revision.
I had a bit of a vision drawing on my background conducting qualitative social community engaged research with communities in East Palo Alto. So I would recommend we have like a set kind of interview template. We can also provide some general training, like a very quick interview guidelines. But it can be like we said we wanted like a raw initial reaction, and then we can have some other guided questions, obviously a consent form. In terms of logistics and scheduling, I was just imagining we can have like a Calendly or online scheduler where participants can put their availability and we can put ours and offer as many slots as we want. But yeah, just standardizing like the legal and all of those like disclosure things we need to read people, and then having a sort of standard set of questions. I guess that was just my vision. And conducting it either over Zoom probably, so it can be recorded.
I know earlier in a previous agenda item, we had a brief discussion about the specific dynamic of, paying participants, people who do show up for things like focus groups, or people who are engaging with the commission. I don't know the logistic or financial side of potentially incentivizing these focus groups through like a small amount of a gift card or something like that, but that has shown to be very, very effective in getting attendance to focus groups in the past. So perhaps we could have more of that conversation in individual meetings between you and I, if that's possible. But
My understanding is that legally that would be difficult for the structure that's laid out for government, but especially at the state level, but we will look into that. But I do think, just managing expectations a little bit, my understanding is that that would maybe not be feasible.
I know there's an item for me on the agenda with next steps for staff, but just to address this conversation here, what I am going to take away is connecting with our legal team. Commissioner Jessica, I like the outline that you recommended. I will propose that, see if there's any concerns, and I will reach out to you with any updates. And same to you, Chair Pope.
Okay, so thank you for recapping that conversation, Director Wallace. Any other thoughts on the plan broadly before we close out this discussion? All right, thank you all. Back to you, Chair Wednesday.
officially, are there any other comments, questions, or discussion from the commission? Something I would like to bring up from our previous agenda item, I do not believe that we got to have some of our discussion time for that, and I did have a thought. Seeing as we are all on terms, we're serving terms, I wanted to just get on the record a question about how we might keep former commissioners involved in our work. Perhaps having like some type of advisory committee, which is something that we could create, and we talked about that in the previous agenda item. And that will kind of support in maintaining our network, keeping up our momentum, and maintaining kind of the continuity of our vision, and continually like keeping commissioners who have previously been involved and would like to continue to be involved in the commission involved and updated. But I wanted to just bring that up very briefly. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission?
I'm sorry, are you talking about this agenda item? Or are we
This was the last one because we did not do our comment or question, so I just wanted to bring that up on the record.
Okay, we have to have public comment on this.
All right, perfect. There are no more questions or comments from the commission. We will move on to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Pope. At this time, there's no public comment for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Due to our time constraints, we are running a little late today, so we are going to have to move agenda item number 8 to our next meeting. So we will skip to agenda item 9. Our final agenda item before adjournment is next steps for staff action. Our discussion today covered a range of updates and ideas to move the work of the commission forward. We would like to engage commission staff on digging further into key areas that will support our future meetings and progress. From today's discussion, we have identified the following items.
Well, I will go based on the list that I have here. You all please feel free to let me know if I've missed anything or if you would like any additional steps for staff to take between now and our September meeting. First and foremost, the logo discussion, taking the updates that I discussed earlier back to the comms team for the Go Serve office, incorporating the font changes, the color changes, and also exploring adding or taking away certain aspects of the designs. We will bring those revisions back to our next meeting for the strategic plan review, having a conversation about the public comment period on the website for communities to interact directly with the plan on our webpage. That is outside of that community engagement plan that we're discussing in the last agenda item. So continuing to connect with commissioners to figure out what does that interview process looks like, as well as connecting with our legal team to see what's possible without us violating the Bagley-Keene Act is also the focus between now and then. Really having a solid second draft of our strategic plan seems to be the focus, so connecting with staff and commissioners, as well as Joyce, to figure out what is the best way to really capture the voice of community, commissioners, and our staff, again, while abiding by all of the Bagley-Keene rules. So that is my takeaway from this meeting, but open to any comments or concerns from commission.
Does the commission have any other next steps to propose for staff action?
Business cards?
Business cards for the commissioners would be lovely.
I will absolutely explore that, and a gavel for Chair Pope. If there are no other questions or concerns, I will pass it back to Chair Wednesday.
Thank you, Director Wallace, for sharing these thoughts and guiding us toward a concrete set of next steps. Unfortunately, I do not have a gavel yet, it sounds like, but that brings us to meeting adjournment. May we adjourn the meeting by common consent? All right. Thank you to the Youth Empowerment Commission staff, commissioners, and public for joining us today. Our next meeting is September 27th, 2025 in Stockton, California. With that, we are adjourned at 2:40 p.m. Thank you all for coming.
Trying to figure out this communication thing with that is